I call this meeting to order at 9:17 a.m. Roll call and verification of quorum.
Chair Regan.
Here.
President Hall.
Here.
Vice President Wilson.
Here.
Comptroller Fabregas.
Here.
Speaker Ananobi. Pro Tempore Kehoe. Absent. CRT Chair Block. FAO Chair Dench.
Here.
ORS Chair Malikoff.
Here.
Senator Huerta absent. Senator Duque.
Right now.
ASB Vice Chair Brackett. Student at Large Desai.
Here.
Student at Large Rembaum.
Here.
And Senator Bertram.
Here.
Approval of the minutes. Is there a motion to postpone approval of the minutes for yesterday and Monday? Any objections? Seeing none, approval of the agenda. Ben,
Move to approve today's agenda.
there's been a motion to approve the agenda. Are there any objections? Seeing none, the agenda stands approved. Announcements from the chair. We're going to be quick, efficient, respectful. Hope everyone had a restful evening, and we're going to speak when addressed. Okay? Announcements from the vice chair.
Give me just 1 second. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. Okay, so I'd like to direct your all's attention to the first line in my announcements. I've attached a little spreadsheet just talking about a couple different areas to look at the bigger picture of the total budget. So the first slide on there is the percentage that the total either cut or increase that each entity's made by number and then by percentage. So you can see that the 3 entities that have taken the biggest cut so far are, by total dollars, is legislative, then homecoming, and then the executive branch. And then the 3 biggest that have taken the biggest cuts by total percentage of their budget are the election commission, then homecoming, then the legislative branch. Next up on the second page, I've got each of the areas of funding of the total budget. So you can see salaries and benefits broken up, OPS, operations, programming and services, R&R, and revenue. The third page is each entity's individual budget line and their percentage of that entity's total budget. And then the last page is that percent changed from the very beginning, but each individual line's percentage changed. And that's all I have.
Austin,
I have a question about just the breakdown and everything. I'm looking at a couple, and it says for the executive branch, we lost $5,000, but I believe we went down from 120 to 72, and that's a $48,000 reduction.
Sean,
This is based off the numbers from last year's budget, so the actual cuts rather than the decreases to the request.
Can you further clarify?
Austin,
Can you further clarify?
Sean,
So for the executive branch in particular, give me just 30 seconds. So last year, the 2021-2022 budget for the executive branch was $658,000. This year, we've approved the executive branch for $652,000. So that's approximately a $6,000 cut.
any other questions? Seeing none, announcements from committee members. None. Announcements from non-committee members. Birdie.
Hey everyone, you all did a great job with this yesterday. I just want to remind you to make sure you're using the mics when you're talking. If you don't, then Julian and Ian won't be able to hear you, and also the people, anybody watching the live stream won't be able to hear you. So just keep a reminder on that.
Any questions for Brody? Old business, none. Entity callbacks, legislative branch. Shanir.
Alrighty, so I know there was a lot of conversation about where my branch could take more cuts. So I'm going to, if I may, Ryan, yield to Zach and Ariane to talk about those specifically.
You may.
I
Sure.
yield to Zach and Ariane.
Do you want to do this part here and I'll just talk about FAO specifically?
We can do it that way if you want, or we can both kind of go back and forth a little bit. We pulled a lot of stats to kind of give a more well-rounded picture, and Brody was very nice and gave us some stats on the previous years and when we had to do money transfers. So first of all, I'm going to start off with like the easy statistics that I pulled. So for this current year, in terms of allocations, we funded 61% of the amount that they requested. So that's more than through bills, because bills are always 50. And the total number of students impacted was 625, with the previous years being closer to 3,000 students. The undergrad to graduate ratio is 51 graduate students to 56 undergraduate students. And then based on us running out of money, in the fiscal year for 2017 to 2018, the CRT budget was $556K, and they ran out of funds in March with a $7K transfer from the Senate Working Fund, or FAO. And in 2018, they ran out in March as well, and that was a $50K transfer from the Senate Working Fund. So based on 650, that figure, we're looking to run out of CRT funds in around March this year. If we reduce that further, we would essentially cut out most of the spring and the entire summer semester funding for CRT and those students.
So yeah, just to clear that up if it wasn't exactly clear, the reason you see reversions in CRT accounts in the ANSF business page is it's because they completely ran out of money and then FAO had to transfer money to them. So that's a leftover of the transfers of the funds. So just onto FAO more specifically, numbers that we've impacted this year. So halfway through the year, about a little under 6,000 students, 5,899 students. So, kind of stretching that out to next semester too, we're going to impact roughly 10,000, a little over 10,000, between 10,000 and 12,000 students. So that's, roughly 10% of our student population, a little over that. It's, understanding that we all have to have cuts somewhere. I'm, comfortable as the FAO chair, kind of going with like a $25,000 cut to it. Just understand that means we will run out of money from FAO earlier in the year. That means there will not be any money to transfer to CRT, and there will be less students impacted directly, being able to fund their events and that kind of thing for all the RSOs. So like I said, it's, we all do have to make cuts, and that's just the reality of the situation. So it's okay if we have to take another, as Meg suggested, another $25,000 to get it down to, I think, $305,000. That's okay. Just everyone needs to be in the understanding that means less students will be impacted, and there'll be less money to go around. There won't be any money to transfer to CRT, and we will run out of money much earlier because as of it right now, with the $350,000 we have, we've used about half of it halfway through the year. So it does tend to slow down right around final exam times because nobody's really having events after that. But still, there's less budgeted to be spent then anyways. So that's just things to keep in mind. The other last point that I'll just make real quick too is we've eliminated most things that we feel as if are not non-essential, but that we have the area to make cuts. And we're now down to OPS, and we're down to student experience / quality of experience. And the reality of the situation is we just have to make the hard choice of which one we feel is the more important one to remain in the budget, whether it be OPS and student employees in certain areas, and not even having to cut their job to cut their hours back maybe, or if they're above minimum wage, cut it down from minimum wage, or cutting away student experience and equality of student experience. So that's the decision that we're at now. That's this FAO and CRT side of it, as far as, students who were impacted directly with their RSOs and their trips and their travels. and their events that they put on, the promotional items they give out. So that's the legislative side of it, I think.
To kind of add on to add a few final points, for CRT, we've already reduced by 4.41% and FAO for 5.71%. And I kind of wanted to close this out by reading a statement from a student that was funded through CRT. And this is an email. These are emails I commonly get. First, I would like to give you an update on the IISE members who went to the SWE conference in Indianapolis via our allocation. So an allocation is a lower amount, FYI, than a bill would be. The 4 members we sent returned Sunday morning with several callbacks, interviews, and offers. The virtual career fair will be held Tuesday, which 6 more members will be attending. Thank you for your help on this allocation. So these are real students that are heavily impacted by this funding, and to run out of money and not be able to fund them for the spring and summer semester would be honestly heartbreaking on my behalf.
We're now in line for questioning. Meg.
Thank you. Just to clarify, you shared numbers from 2017, 2018. Can you please share the numbers from the last 3 years, 2019, 2020, 2021? And I know those are atypical. I recognize that, but I think that would be helpful just to get transparency.
Yes, so those are COVID years. So CRT funding was down. We can pull them up from the ASF website. All of y'all should have access to that. So far this fiscal year, we've funded a little bit over 100K of our budget. So that will revert, and that is what we will be using towards, what's the fancy word?
What?
The reverted funds that were coming back from this year, they're going to be used towards, whatever. I'm forgetting the fancy term, but I'm going to pull up the ASF website.
What was your question again, Meg?
The contingency accounts, I think is what you meant.
Contingency, that's going to go towards the contingency. So those reversions are what's going to help.
My question was, thank you, by the way. My question was, what was the amount that was spent in the past 3 years?
Here's the thing is we also expect this to go back up next year and be more towards a normal year like 2018 and 2019. If you're asking for 2021 and 2020, yeah. Did you want to pull those FAO numbers?
I'm sorry, I thought that was directed at CRT, not FAO. The numbers I gave you were from this year. I honestly didn't prepare those ones, but I can real quick run it and look at them.
You want CRT for 18-19?
Yeah, just the amount reverted
Yeah, so
in the past couple years.
FAO, there was last year, there was 7,000 reverted, and which was a reversion rate of 5.8. And there was let me just make sure I have this right here. A remaining balance of $15,000. There was, sorry, hold on, just pages take a minute to load. I'm just going to be guessing. I'll give you the exact number as soon as it loads. That the year before was probably a little bit more than that, just because that was the first part of COVID. So there was probably only, I would imagine, half of the money spent. Here we go, now loaded. So $695 reverted from FAO, and there was actually a remaining balance of $60,000. So with the reversions in there too. So that was the year that we used obviously half it, because the first half was everyone was in person, and then the second half is when COVID hit.
Yeah.
So those are the numbers from the past 3 years. So the numbers I gave you like when I first spoke was the numbers from this year. So we used about half of it. Last year we had about $6,000 remaining, and the year before that we had about $60,000 remaining.
I'm going to simplify these a little bit just because the accounts changed and we transferred funds out. So for CRT, the total amount we allocated in 2020 to 21 was $37,000. And that's mainly because we were only funding virtual conferences primarily. And then so far this year, we've allocated a total of $119K. And we only recently started funding international travel. And for the summer semester, we weren't funding any in-person conferences. If that provides some clarity.
Yeah.
In 18-19, CRT spent a little north of $690,000, and FAO spent $291,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ben, Austin.
Yeah, you gave a lot of percentage breakdowns, which are great in the when you were talking. I guess both of you gave percentages. I'm not sure, but could you do the monetary breakdown as well, just so I can put a number next to the percentage? Like when you said like there was a 5% cut, just kind of like what number that would be.
Yeah, so I'll let her do CRTs, but FAO so far last year we had a budget of $350,000. This year, as it stands right now, we have cut $20,000 from that, so we're at $330,000 in our proposed budget right now.
Our budget for CRT this year is $680K, and we're reducing it to $650 thus far.
Austin.
So when you're discussing kind of how FAO has sometimes had to support CRT and everything, for the last maybe 3 to 4 years, can you just explain how much money has been transferred from FAO to support CRT?
So 2018 through 19, that was $50K. 2019 to 2020, I don't believe there was a transfer, and then there weren't transfers after that. May I motion for a non-committee member to speak?
Yeah. Birdie.
So just to answer that piece, Brenda did a great job of helping us find the transfers so we knew when they happened specifically. And we didn't see the one in there from 1920, but if you look at the budgets, it says 740 and I believe 290. So I think they transferred 50,000 in the spring of 2020. But I don't have a record of that, but we obviously didn't budget $740,000. So that's an assumption I'm making.
And I thought 1819 was somewhere around 100,000.
I mean, I have the account totals if that helps. So for 2018-19, CRT started with 650, they ended with 713. And then for 2019 through 20, we started with 680 and we ended with 740. And FAO reduced both of those times, so I'm not sure how much of it was from FAO and how much of it might have been from other sources.
Let me pull up the old budget bill and see what it ended with. $63,000. CRT's budget increased by $63,000 through budget transfers throughout the year. And FAO ended up giving up $94,000. Desai.
Hi, sorry, it took me a little bit. So, in your own words, would you rather sacrifice OPS, or would you rather sacrifice FAO and CRT money based off of your own call from what you've seen this past year?
So
Just out of curiosity.
I think me and Zach are on the same page with this.
it is definitely a much larger discussion than just, a simple one question answer. But when I think it comes to valuing student experience versus our pay, like I said, maybe not cutting the entire job or the entire paycheck, but maybe reducing OPS a little bit or reducing the hours in which students work, I would rather see us take those hits than hits to student experience at large and quality of student experience.
I mean, going back to our student impact numbers, when CRT and FAO combined impact thousands of students, I'd rather the OPS be cut that's primarily impacting a few student government agents than thousands of students. So I'd rather OPS be cut than this budget.
Maddie.
Yeah, so I just have a point of clarification regarding the reversions in FAO and CRT. It's not as transparent as it's not all the money's being allocated. Since it's primarily used by students, the money reverted is sometimes when they don't correctly go through the funding process of their bills. So we've been seeing a high amount of bill reversions because people aren't following the bill process correctly when they're filling out their form. So then that money, even though allocated towards them for us, so we are technically spending the money, it's just not being spent correctly. So it comes back into the Senate funds. So that's why you see reversions for FAO, because they do give money to CRT, but then there is that reversion rate of partially like student funding going back, and same with CRT. So that's just what I wanted to add.
Lexi.
I just have a question. You might have said this, but how much has CRT like spent this year? Like just this fiscal year?
119K.
Okay, because I think maybe that the NSF database is wrong, because it says that you only spent 47,000. Okay.
CRT has allocated 119.
Okay. Then maybe mine's like not updated. Like, are you looking where it says like expenditures? Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
When you're looking at FAO and CRT, look at the Senate funds page, not the normal bill way, like the normal budgeting way. Ben.
Move to debate.
There's been a motion to go to debate. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we're now in debate. Is there a motion to limit debate to 15 minutes? Any objections?
So moved.
Seeing none. Ben.
Alrighty. So I just have a few things to say. Let's see. So everyone was talking about, in a normal world, we'll be able to fund everything, and that's all great. In an ideal world, yes, we will absolutely be able to fund everything. And as we saw in the numbers that you all gave in 2017, 2018, we were able to fund everything. And we lived in an ideal world. We didn't have a pandemic going on. But sadly, that's not the reality that we're living in right now. And sadly, that's been shown over the past few years. And that's affected everything that we're doing here today. That's affected, as you mentioned, international travel. And on that note, I remember, at least from my time in Senate, there weren't a whole lot of international travel numbers that were happening, a lot of more domestic traveling. So I think that using international travel as a form of, it might increase exponentially, isn't a fair assumption, seeing as how like UCF Global, for example, will send a lot of students, and they help with those funds as well. And along with that, with budgets cuts, I completely understand not wanting to cut anyone's budget. The OPS conversation, I'm not even going to touch. I rather not have that conversation. I think that this conversation is pointless and will waste all of our times, in my opinion. But when it comes to budget cuts, no one wants to cut their budget. I understand neither of you wanted to cut their budget. I understand your branch not wanting to cut their budget. But at the end of the day, that is why we are all here, to cut budgets, to make sure that we fall into this formation. When Rick was standing up there, he was more than happy to work with us, and I'm sure we are all eternally grateful for that. But every single budget cut that we took out of him, the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we cut, it affects him. It affects how the union operates. And yeah, he said he might be able to handle it, but at the same time, he might not be able to. And I think that argument applies for both of your communities as well. I think it applies for the cuts that we did for them as well yesterday. I think when we cut homecoming yesterday, we hindered their opportunity to be able to get proper performers, to be able to essentially run their events. And yeah, it sucks, but that's why we're all on this committee, to make those hard calls. And I think that this is no different. I do think that both committees should be cut a little bit. In an ideal world, like I said, we will be able to spend all of it, but we're still not at there yet. And next year, realistically, in my eyes at least, I could be wrong, I don't think we'll be there yet either, which is why I'm not going to make a motion yet. I don't want to hear more debate, but I will be proposing a $20,000 cut to FAO. I don't think the $25,000 that you offered up is necessary. FAO is a smaller budget. You all at least are able to see more RSOs, because travel is a different story. You can't always travel. The university has restrictions. And then for CRT, I do believe that we should do a $50,000 cut to a $75,000 cut. Like I said, in an ideal world, it won't be affected. this would affect it in an ideal world, but I don't think we're going to be there quite yet. And I think that that's more than manageable to make. And it also will help us cut down $95,000 or $65,000, $75,000 out of our total and make everyone's lives easier and having to look at less agencies. And I think that's more than fair.
Meg.
Thank you so much for preparing that information today because I think it really helps. So I want to start by saying thank you for that. I want to clarify too, and I tried to do this last night, but I just want to make crystal clear that the thought process of bringing this up had nothing to do with thoughts of student impact or thinking that there wasn't great enough or large enough or across enough students. The only number I was really concerned about yesterday wasn't number of students or how much money you were giving each student individually, but how much money was being reverted. That's what I was concerned with. And I can echo Ben's statements that I can't tell the future, but I predict next year travel not being where it's been in 2017. We're still coming out of COVID. I would like to clarify too that the numbers that I suggested yesterday were just rounding out our cut and then rounding out y'all's cuts to 10%. So it's bringing CRT down to 612 and the working fund down to 315, not 305, just to clarify. No, you're good. No worries. I appreciate you sharing that information though today, because that really helped because it helped educate me too about like where we're looking at things. I am more than willing to be flexible on this and I appreciate y'all coming to the table.
There are 10 minutes left. Zach.
Yeah, just really quick. I appreciate what you guys said. And obviously, if I offered a $25,000 cut, obviously I'd be perfectly in favor of a $20,000 or $15,000 cut. I think those are good ideas, and I do agree with the travel aspect of what you all are saying. I think that's definitely necessary. So. Just so it's clear for everyone here, I think everything that so far has been proposed by, Ben, you're not technically an exec anymore, but by you guys so far, I think has been definitely really acceptable, acknowledging that all of us have to make cuts.
Sean.
Okay, so I want to talk about OPS.
Keep this to FAO and CRT right now.
Okay. So I think when talking about CRT and FAO, while I do believe CRT should be cut, I don't think it should be cut by the numbers we're all proposing. I think looking at actual cuts, not reductions to proposals, because a lot of entities came in here requesting budgets way higher than they had last year. So the reductions we've had on their budgets don't actually result in them taking a cut. The legislative branch has taken, in dollar amount, the largest cut across the entire budget. And that's all I have for CRTFAO.
Lexi.
I just want to start by saying, again, echoing Meg's statements, that I really appreciate you guys. I think it did provide a lot of clarity and like preparing all that. I'm sure it wasn't like it was timely, so I really appreciate it. I want to echo Ben's statements. I think the numbers he's proposing and the numbers that Meg had mentioned yesterday are appropriate. I went ahead and did like percentage wise, and like CRT has spent 17.5% this year, and FAO has spent 40.6%. This year, and let's say we were to leave it at the 650 number that we had originally cut for CRT, and with the expenditures spent this year, it would be at 18.3%. So I definitely am in agreement that I think there is like stuff still to cut there. I want to be hesitant in cutting too much because I think that could also have a negative impact. I really don't want to make sure that we like find the middle ground here. But I do want to just show my support for what the numbers Meg and Ben had proposed.
7 minutes and 30 seconds remaining. Shanira. Austin.
So as I agree with everyone's statements, I think that information has definitely helped me kind of foresee different things. I think after this conversation or the things that you all presented, I will say, I think cutting CRT is the smart move, but I wouldn't cut FAO as much as we're potentially proposing, just because it seems that FAO has sometimes had to come support CRT when it's necessary and things like that. And it's say if we all are here today and we're a little bit wrong in our perceptions of what normal will look like, what if everyone does get a little bit back to normal, then I hope FAO could step in and help CRT with that. So I would say I'm in favor of the $50,000 to $75,000 cut for CRT, but I think we should look maybe at like a $10,000 reduction potentially, or a little bit for FAO, just to make sure that in case something does happen, CRT can be supported.
I am.
Yeah. So for me, looking at all the numbers, I definitely think that cutting CRT might be the better move, especially since we are still coming out of a pandemic. But also at the same time, I don't believe we should be cutting their both budgets as much as we're considering, especially since that this is the money that directly impacts students. And I know we run into this conversation all the time, but I definitely do think that having more money there is better than not having enough, because typically we always do run out of money. During Senate in a normal year, some of us have experienced 2 years in Senate. And we see the money run out very much and very, very quickly. I'd rather not have that impact students. And I'd rather have more of that money coming out of the OPS budget. And like they've proposed earlier, cutting down a few hours and maybe cutting all of the pay down to minimum wage. I definitely think that would be the better move here, especially considering that this is the students' quote unquote money. And if they see that that majority of the budget is being cut from what they can get back as student RSOs, I definitely think that that would be the better move, to where maybe we cut down hours from 20 to 10, and then cut down pay from 12 to 11 and 14 to 11. And we just make sure that it's more even and more fair.
And keep this to FAO and CRT, please.
That's it.
Maddie.
Yeah, I'd just like to speak on this really quick. I think that when we're looking at this, it's not proportionality of cuts through agencies. It's just how much money is realistically being spent. And I tend to agree that more money should be pulled out of CRT than it should be out of the Senate Working Fund. I mean, FAO has already taken $20,000 away. So if I were looking at cutting, I would think it would be equaling out what, I guess, how much is being taken out of both. So, I mean, I know Zach proposed a 25 for FAO. I don't know if we wanted to match the 20 reduction with another 20 or something, and then take 40 out of CRT. I think that would be a comfortable number for everyone, at least in my opinion. But that's just what I have to say, a 40 cut from registration and travel, and then another 20 from working fund.
Ben, you're going to make a motion?
Yeah. Move to adjust line item 152 for CRT from 650,000 to 600,000, and the Senate Working Fund line 153 from 330,000 to 310,000.
There's been a motion to amend line 152 registration and travel to 600,000 and line 153 Senate Working Fund to 310,000. Are there any objections?
I object.
Do you withdraw?
Who objected?
Sean. What's your objection for?
I'd like to talk about OPS and how
I will
its
not withdraw.
consideration should be drawn into the total cuts from the legislative branch before we go ahead and cut one of the CRT or FA accounts.
Sean, your 1 minute starts when you're ready.
Okay, so
About the appropriateness of the motion.
okay, so I think that while yes, we should be looking at changes to the CRT account, I think that the numbers that we're trying to change it to right now don't reflect the entire picture of the legislative branch and the numbers that should be taken into account when looking at the CRT account. I think that if we look at the OPS accounts first and see what we can work with there and then compare that to what we can work with in CRT, we can lessen the amount of dollars that are directly going to students that we're cutting from CRT.
Ben.
Yeah, we're in this committee for budgets, for budget cuts. Right now, we are still well over where we have to be. By cutting this budget, it will not only help us, it will help the general student body as well. For the OPS conversation, I hope that you have numbers ready for the RWC and every single other agency and every single other department, because if we're looking at only cutting your two OPSs, I think that's wildly unfair and wildly unrealistic. I think we should vote on what I have proposed. This is what we've been talking about for the last 15 minutes. These were numbers that I came to. If y'all don't want to do those numbers, feel free to vote against it. I still think that this motion should be made. I still think we should vote, and I still think that we should reduce the budgets.
All right, we'll be in voting procedure. For is for Sean, for the objection, against is Ben. All those in favor? All those against? And all those abstaining. With a vote count of 2 to 8 to 1, we'll now be in voting procedure on the amendment. There's been a motion to amend line 152, registration and travel, to $600,000. In line 153, the Senate Working Fund, to $310,000. All those in favor? Zach, what's your vote? All those against? Yeah, give me a second. All those against? All those abstaining? Zoom folks, how are you voting?
Abstaining.
Against.
With a vote count of 6 to 3 to 4, the amendment passes. Zoom friends, when we vote, just type your vote in the chat. The time for debate has expired. Bertram.
Yeah, so in total, when we were reducing our requests and everything, we've lowered the Senate budget by $120,000. So I feel like that's enough right now. So I will move to vote on line items 150 through 158.
There's been a motion to vote on lines 150 to 158. Are there any objections?
I object.
Do you withdraw?
No.
Sean, your 1 minute starts when you're ready.
I don't think we should be done with the legislative branch yet. I think that we should open up more time for debate so that we can have the OPS discussion.
I don't want to touch OPS.
All right, we'll now be in voting procedure. 4 is for Sean, against is for Jacob. And then there's abstain. Zoom, please vote in the chat. All those in favor? All those against? All those abstaining? Morgan, how did you vote? With a vote count of 4 to 7 to 2, we will now be voting on lines 150 to 158. All those in favor? All those against? And all those abstaining? With a vote count of 11 to 2 to 0, the legislative branch is approved. Lexi.
I want to move to go back to the ANSF business office.
There's been a motion to go to the Activity and Service Fee Business Office. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we're there. We're now in line for questioning. Austin.
If possible, may I direct a question either to Dr. Posey or Gary?
Yes.
Awesome. Just because I'll preface this first, looking at all the different things potentially to cut agencies, departments, branches, whatever else it is, I was just having some clarifying questions I hope I could get answered regarding the turf fields and the status of those projects, because I know those are both big asks of $100,000. And I just wanted to see potentially what the impact to the RWC would be if those weren't potentially fully funded, and also if there's any other money in the pot currently for the turf fields.
I'm happy to answer it. Good morning, everyone. I know Sarah explained this a little bit yesterday. the turf fields 1 through 3 were built in 2006. And in 2015, we had $1 million through the contributions to the ASF R&R fund to replace them. As Sarah, I believe, mentioned yesterday, I was watching on the stream, it cost a little bit more because our drainage system failed. And so we got a little behind. Our other set of fields were built in 2009. The thing about our turf fields is they have 10-year warranties. And so our second set of fields is now out of warranty. Fortunately, we've done some maintenance to them. We've paid for over the last couple of years to extend the lifespan. But we know that in the next year, they need to be replaced. From a liability standpoint, artificial turf is abundantly safe for recreational activity, but as it ages, it can perform at a level where if it's now unable to be repaired through warranty, then we would risk, if someone was injured and we had an unsafe playing surface and didn't replace the turf in the time period that we scheduled, that could be troublesome for us. And so we are right now starting up the project. It's been about a year process to replace it. So we're hoping next summer that we'll be replacing fields 4 through 6, which will be at that point almost 13 years old.
Follow up?
Yes, please. So is the money that is being requested in this next fiscal year going to go to those, or do you already have the $1 million or I guess $2 million for each of the fields you're trying to replace?
I'm not sure what the current balance is right now. I believe it's over $1 million. That's a budget estimate. So when we do pricing and we get requests for proposals from the different turf companies, as we know, costs of construction and materials are rising across all different sectors. So if the pricing comes in higher, then that project will have to wait until after the start of the next fiscal year when there's an additional $200,000 in the account.
Thank you. So I guess because the fields that are being replaced is the 4 and 6 one you said?
Fields 4 through 6.
4
So if
through
you're at RWC Park, those are the 3 fields that are on the northern side, I guess.
And so the state of fields 1 and 2 right now, that is the money's being requested for, they're not out of warranty yet.
No, those fields are now 4 years old.
Okay.
And so in 6 years, we'll be looking at replacing those. And so I understand the question. If it would not be wise to decrease the amount that we put in that account for the future of the sustainability of those fields.
Briefly.
Yeah, of course. I understand that, and I think we've had a whole conversation about reversions, proviso language, and everything like that. Would the RWC potentially be comfortable if we come down to it, we do take money, but then at the end we say, if there's money left over, then it goes back to the RWC projects that they're requesting for these turf fields?
I mean, I think that's a decision you all can make if that works for you. My concern would be in future years, if that didn't happen, we'd now have to educate this body on how it's important to increase the budget, knowing that there may not be future additional dollars. So it's a risk.
Ben.
Dr. Posey, under your operations tab, there's $550,000 for a UCFIT assessment. I was wondering if that's something that we could possibly cut down a little bit of it, and then what exactly does the UCFIT assessment mean, just so I have a better understanding before we actually go into cuts.
Okay, from my understanding, the IT assessment is the amount that we contribute to the university for any IT work or equipment. And as far as I know, I don't believe that would be something that we could cut, because that is something that is going to the university on that behalf.
In an email about it, like last week or the week before, Dave explained a little bit that when computers become out of warranty in an ASF area, it'll also replace them when they get to the end of their life cycle, which is every 5 years or something. Ben.
It's a different question. under the same tab for printing and reproduction, what is that one for?
Okay, for printing and reproduction, we provide paper, and I believe we also provide the ink cartridges and toner for certain areas. And I believe that student government is one of those areas that we provide that service for. And it also includes the copier services and the printer services.
Maddie?
Yeah, I just had a question regarding just if we have to look at reducing something, if reducing contingency would be, I don't know, I don't want to say a safer bet, but I want to say something more comfortable with rather than reducing those like long-term R&R kind of like cycle, like life cycle contracts. If we were to reduce contingency to around $241,000.
Okay, I had a conversation yesterday with Dave, and what we would prefer is that not be reduced, or if it is reduced, then the additional funding would be included in the proviso language, because we really don't want to go below that because of the information that he provided yesterday.
Lexi?
Okay, I have a question. So maybe you can answer this better. I saw, and I know I mentioned this a little bit yesterday, but I saw like a lot of repetition when it came to like replacing of fitness equipment and things like that. And I see it come up again on the R&R special projects. Is that 75? Like, I'm not saying we're going to reduce, but if we were to reduce, would you rather us reduce fitness equipment rather than the turf fields?
Forgive me, I wasn't here yesterday, but was the fitness equipment already reduced down pretty significantly?
Yes, it was.
I would, and I think I'm not sure what Sarah explained yesterday, but I think in this year that can be managed because of some of the reductions we've done to equipment that lessens our costs in the next year or two because things won't need to be replaced. But I would long-term, again, advise against reducing that because at a certain point, we'll need to get that line back up, and it would be really challenging to tell a future committee that we need to put an additional $100,000 or $125,000. I know you're talking about the ASF business office. I think if there were things we would prefer to cut, I would look at some of the things Jim suggested yesterday in his presentation before cutting those R&R lines additionally.
Okay, thank you.
Gary, would you be good with $25,000 to $50,000 from RWC operations?
Are you talking about in the RWC?
Like the RWC's actual budget?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly make that work. I think we had the next priority that Jim had suggested were some OPS cuts. So I think we'd probably prefer to come from that line before we went to operations, but either way, we can make that amount work.
Is there a motion to go to the Recreation and Wellness Center? Any objections? Seeing none, we're there. Zach?
I was going to object to that just because I had something else to say, but I'll wait until you make another motion, I guess, because it's not a question.
Okay. Block?
Wasn't the recommendation in the presentation to reduce part-time custodial staff? Correct.
Yeah, we had already reduced it a little bit, but we could reduce it down by another $12,000 from our OPS line for part-time custodial staff.
So you would be comfortable with an OPS maintenance and custodial going from 30,000 to 18,000?
Yes.
Is that the only change for OPS?
I'm sorry, are you asking me?
Yes.
Was that the only?
That's the only change you're comfortable with for OPS, correct?
I mean, if there's additional cuts needed, we can look at some other areas and I can talk about the pros and cons of them if you'd like, but
Maddie, Ben, Julian.
I would just like to say I think the RDBC has taken more than enough cuts. I think that I would personally like to look at the contingency in the NSF budget and look at putting some provisional language and then seeing if we can take some more from another agency who has not received any cuts. I just think that the RDBC has been more than generous, and we've been talking about how we don't want to cut OPS, and they're comfortable with it to a certain extent, but I just don't want to look at OPS, to be honest.
Ben.
I agree with what Maddie said. I do think one thing that could possibly be looked at is reduction of the hours at Knights Plaza for the weekends, or making it a 12-hour shift instead of what it's at now. But I also do agree that have cut a lot from the RWC. I do think that there are some organizations that haven't been cut as much or haven't been cut at all, and that we could look at them.
Point of inquiry, are we in question or debate? We moved to RWC, which means we're in questioning.
Yeah. Julian, is this a question?
Yes.
You may.
To the speaker, do you think that reduction in OPS custodial staffing part-time may sort of hinder your ability to continue making the RWC a safe space, considering COVID concerns, considering all this kind of stuff that's happening?
I think that's a really good question. Any reduction, obviously, is a potential for not having as much staff as we need. I think operationally, because of the hiring process at the university, because custodial staff, like many staff, don't get paid probably what they can outside of the university, it just becomes challenging to fill positions. So that OPS role gives us an additional flexibility if we're down. Not everyone, knock on wood, right now. Fortunately, we're very well and full staffed on our custodial team. So right now, no, that wouldn't be a challenge. I could see in the future, if we were short staffed, it was, but I think our team that Sarah leads does a great job. And so if we need to cut that position, I think that would impact students the least of our cuts.
A follow-up, if I may?
You may.
Thank you. And I know that this was lower in priority to the reduction of hours in Knight Plaza. Honestly, I'm personally against both of these personally, but I'm wondering why you all would rather reduce the hours of Knight Plaza further, considering that we're closing at weekends, than do OPS changes.
I think I look at it from, just what greater good we can do for all students who participate in our recreational activities. If we cut from intramural sports, that will assuredly make a team of students who sign up on the deadline day not get to play soccer or flag football at all. Whereas if Knights Plaza is closed on Saturdays and someone wanted to get in, 20 minutes on a treadmill or a quick workout, yes, it may be less convenient, but they could go to the other side of campus and use the main facility. So we're not taking away someone's recreational opportunity. So that's why we prioritize that a little bit higher.
I'm sorry, one last short follow-up, if I may.
You may.
Okay. I know that the concern with reducing hours and cutting hours from the Knight Plaza location was also due to the fact that most of the people who were attending were female, and there's a concern about the RWC sort of being more intimidating. Do you think there are opportunities for, considering this is a couple years from now, for the RWC to do things, whether it's in the marketing department or whether it's in sort of creating different spaces that may be helpful for some of those participants who may be intimidated by some of the grunting and all that stuff that we heard yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely. I think our new marketing coordinator, who is also in charge of our inclusive recreation efforts, has really focused on that. Some of the functional space that we've added in the main facility has, just from observational standpoint, been a very inclusive space that gets a different type of student. I think when you look at Knights Plaza on the weekend, we don't typically offer group fitness classes in that space, whereas during the week we offer all of our mind and body, our yoga, Pilates classes. And so that's where a lot of the traffic is driven from. And so reducing weekend hours that we've already done, and then reducing early morning and maybe later in the evening hours, they're just less trafficked to that space. And so we're really not impacting as many students who can use that space other times during the day.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your answers.
Desai.
Okay, so I have a quick question on OCO. How important is the gator? And I know with the bunker racks, that's kind of like something that's more important, but like the gator, is that really that important for this year?
That was a concession made yesterday.
That was a concession made yesterday. My bad. I apologize. I am still a little behind. And then I have a second question, if I may.
A follow-up question?
Yes.
You may.
Okay. Actually, you know what? Never mind. I'll just ask it later. It's not relevant right now. I apologize.
Sean, you were going to make a motion?
Move to go to debate.
There's been a motion to go to debate. Are there any objections? Seeing none, we're now in debate. Austin?
May I have a question and then debate real quick?
You may.
My question actually was for you is what would the, well, I guess for both of you. So you're proposing potentially the $50,000 cut to operations, or you asked it. What exactly would that like impact?
25 to 50.
25 to 50. What exactly would that impact operation wise, like in your budget line?
I think what we would probably do is have to spread that money out across a variety of budget lines. And so, you know, I heard some discussion yesterday about maintenance of fitness equipment, where students would see that if we can't get parts, or we can't get parts for a treadmill or an elliptical or an arc trainer, then machines are going to be down longer, and you'll see, you know, out of order signs longer. You'll see our inability to fund things that come up. Just yesterday, we learned that there's a leak in our irrigation line at our grass fields, and that's not something we specifically budget for. And so we have to put in work orders to try to fix something that could be $5,000, could be $10,000. We can't plan for that. And so it takes away some of the flexibility for the things that are unannounced and come up, and we have to try to find where we have some savings within a budget line. So I think that's what it would do to operations, is it would take away some of that flexibility we have for the things we can't predict.
Zach?
Yeah, I'm gonna, I guess, debate. This is meant to be with the utmost politeness, but I just think these numbers need to be read out. The legislative branch has taken $115,602 from their budget, which 93% of their budget goes back to the students, and exec has only taken a little under $6,000. So I think it's kind of insane for us and members of exec to sit here and ask the RWC to make these
Keep
cuts.
this relevant to the RWC,
It is.
please.
It comes back to it. It's kind of crazy for us to sit here and ask the RWC to make these cuts and to have to try to, we'll find a way, or to have these machines down when we're sitting here like, you can't touch student initiatives because our director of sustainability wants to plant a plant. So, I mean, I think these things need to be prioritized, and I don't think we should touch any more from RWC or any more from ANSF business office or contingency plans. Excuse me. So I think those are important things to go back to, not what the RWC has to offer left.
Sean?
Okay, I've got two things. First being, the RWC has told us that they are comfortable with cutting their OPS. I don't know why we keep avoiding their OPS. We, as an ASF budget, contribute $11.1 million towards employment. That's 52.9% of the total budget towards employment over activities and services. I'd also like to agree with Zach. I think that we should be looking at other areas. The RWC has made their cuts. There are areas that we can clearly touch in other places. And that's all I have.
Maddie.
Yeah, I tend to agree. RWC, I don't think we should be touching OPS. I tend to disagree. I agree and disagree at the same time. I agree that the RWC should not be touched. I just don't think OPS needs to be touched during the RWC. They're saying they're comfortable, but they're not. I don't think. I'd like to motion to just approve their lines, honestly, if there's no dissenting opinions.
I object.
I'm not going to see the motion.
Okay, I don't object.
The committee we've been here for 3 days saying that we'll heed the recommendations of entities when we ask them where their potential cuts are, correct? That's been a repeated conversation we've had. And several times in the last 24 hours, we haven't liked what people have said, even though we've also acknowledged that they know their budgets better than we would. Ben.
I was going to bring up a similar point. I would like to see, I don't want to see anyone cut, but at the end of the day, we still have to cut. And I think continuously going back to the executive and legislative branch is just going to drive us in circles and is going to drive me insane. And the RWC has been generous enough to let us know which areas they would prefer us to cut. And yes, it sucks that we might have to cut them, but at the end of the day, that's why each and every single person in this room is in this room for that exact reason. And we all knew that going into this. With that, may I direct a question, please?
You may.
You mentioned the reduction of the Knights Plaza hours as well as the OPS one. You wouldn't happen to have numbers on how often Knights Plaza gym is open and then what the reduction of bringing it down to a 12-hour workday would be?
It would go from being open for 15 hours a day, Monday through Friday, to 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. is what we had done in the past. We've actually changed Knights Plaza hours over the years based on use. And so Monday through Friday, 9 to 9 each day would be a total of 60 hours. Right now we're open 96. We've already reduced the weekend hours, so made it 72 hours. So it would be really taking an additional 3 to 4 hours a day. Friday, we may close a little bit earlier just because of use Friday nights.
Follow up?
Yes. So just to clarify, by the reduction of the hours in the Knights Plaza gym, we aren't hindering the students' ability to use the RWC facilities, but just their ability for the specific students that live closer to that one to go to that one, whereas the actual main RWC gym will still be open and those students will still have the same opportunity to use the fitness equipment, hypothetically.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Sean, Lexi.
Can I direct a question?
You may.
Would the RWC prefer having a cut to OPS or having a cut to the hours at Knights Plaza?
The same.
It's one and the same. If we reduce the hours, what that would do is we would have about a $5,000 to $6,000 reduction for our member services OPS line and our fitness attendant OPS line, because really it's the staffing that is affected by the reduction of hours. There's no other lost costs.
Lexi.
Okay, so we're in debate, right?
Yes.
So I do want to see a little bit more of a reduction to RWC, whether in the choice that they see fit. They're offering OPS and the reduction of Knights Plaza. I don't think that's going to be detrimental to the RWC's like the way they operate and things like that. I think 9 to 9 is during the weekdays is okay. I think most people tend to work out between those hours anyway and less on the weekends. So I think I'm for that, for the reduction in that. And I just want to be crystal clear if I can direct a question to him, just to make it clear.
You may.
So if we take a $25,000 reduction out of operations, that would only be reducing operations by 1%, and you would still prefer the OPS, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
People on Zoom, did you have debate?
Yes.
You may.
Yes.
Julian.
Just very briefly, I just want to, first of all, I want to say that I believe it's important for us to take from this biggest budget, considering that they've outlined things that we can cut from, that they're comfortable with. We should take both rather than one or the other. And I'm wondering what the actual totals for those would be. So if I may direct a question to the speaker, what would the actual totals in reductions from OPS be for both of those?
So to reduce the hours at Knights Plaza additionally, it would be an additional $11,000 from OPS that would save.
And the custodial staff?
That was 12,000.
12,000. So 9,012. Thank you.
Desai.
So I would agree with potentially reducing the Knights Plaza's hours. I think if we cut it down, that would be a good area to save in. But yeah, no, that's about it. Can I make a motion?
In a moment.
Okay.
Are you going to object? What?
Do we debate?
Is it new?
Yes. Ish.
Briefly.
I think that before we start cutting the RWC's OPS, we should look at student government's OPS and have the OPS discussion before we start having cuts to OPS that's going to directly impact students.
Is there a motion to amend line 98 RWC OPS to $1,856,644 to account for the custodial and Knights Plaza reduction?
How much of a total reduction is that, just in numbers?
Should be 23,000. Yes.
So moved.
I object. I'm not
Lexi.
I'm not comfortable with the custodial as much as I am. Like, the custodial is different from OPS? Or is it on
No,
one?
it's in OPS. It's hourly custodial, which is OPS.
Okay.
Objections are about the appropriateness of the motion, not how you're going to vote on them.
I think that I want to amend the motion. I don't know how to go about that, but
Speak on it.
now.
Yes.
Okay. I think that custodial shouldn't be reduced. I think I don't know. I just think that it should be Knights Plaza reduction. We should start there, and then we look at other entities and take from there. But it's uncomfortable me take money away from custodial staff and take those jobs away.
Two hands motion. Ben.
Yeah, my only debate on the motion is that, yes, the RWC is by far the largest entity that we are funding, and they are also one of the largest entities on our campus because of the vast amount of operations and programs that they supply and facilities that they own. But also keep in mind that they are 33% of our total budget. They are getting $7 million. We have $21 million allocated. We still have to reduce. I'm in favor of the budget cuts. I don't like cutting anybody. I've said that over and over again. But at the end of the day, we're going to keep going in circles if we don't cut anybody. And I think this helps.
Block.
I think what we should be looking to do is minimize student impact. And because of that, I'm way more comfortable cutting custodial staff than I would be cutting a service to students and those hours, because it's primarily students that do those jobs at Knights Plaza. So I'd be way more comfortable cutting custodial staff. With that being said, I'll give a little to the Knights Plaza, even though it's something I don't think we should really be doing. Can we vote? Can I move to vote?
You can.
And with that, I move to vote on the initial amendment.
There's been a motion to amend line 98 RWC OPS to $1,856,644. Will now be in voting procedure. All those in favor? All those against? And all those abstaining? With a vote count of 8 to 2 to 3, the amendment passes. Ben.
Are there any of the other agencies that we called on at the end of yesterday's meeting here and willing to, I guess, have a discussion about their budget? I know someone's going to make a motion probably to go back to the executive or legislative branch. I'm letting you know right now, like, you can make the motion. I'm going to object to the motion. I think we've looked at both of them long enough. I think we should start looking at other agencies, and someone's going to have to get a reduction. It sucks. I don't think we should keep going back to these two branches.
Is there a motion to vote on lines 96 through 105 for the RWC? Any objections? Seeing none, we're now in voting procedure. All those in favor? All those against? And all those abstaining? With a vote count of 10 to 0 to 3, the RWC is approved. Dr. Posey, would you be comfortable with a $52,000 reduction in the contingency budget and put the rest in proviso?
Oh, yes.
You would?
Yes.
Amazing. Is there a motion to go to the activity and service fee business office? Any objection?
I
object.
I think we should look at taking away the creation of new positions before we start cutting contingencies in OPS. I think that's only fair.
Say it again.
I think we should look at cutting the creation of new positions before we look at taking away from contingency, which is important, and taking away from OPS, which clearly is important to everybody on the committee.
Maddie.
I'd like to think that we aren't cutting contingency. There is provisional language, so it is. I don't want to cut student programs when contingency is a contingency, So I think that I'd rather look at that and take a vote to see who wants to go to contingency and who wants to go look at other positions.
Ben.
I don't think we should cut the creation of the new position within MSC. I assume that's the one you're talking about, right? Yeah, I don't think we should be cutting that position. As was stated yesterday, they've been around for 19 years, I believe was the number. And this is the first time they've had a new position created. I am perfectly fine with going to the contingency and ending this before 11 o'clock.
Sean,
I think that it's unfair for us to cut OPS from the RWC without looking at the OPS from our own branches. I think that we should look at student government OPS before we cut anything else.
Desai,
I'm fine with moving to contingencies. So as long as Dr. Posey is okay with the amount that we cut.
Ben, you were going to make a motion.
Yeah. Move to amend line item.
To go to the business office.
Move to go to the activity and service fee business office.
There's been a motion to go to the activity and service fee business office. Are there any objections?
I object.
No.
Your 1 minute starts when you're ready.
I think that
We're doing 30 seconds.
Okay. I think that before we go anywhere else, we should look at OPS for student government.
Ben, your 30 seconds starts when you're ready.
The RWC voluntarily told us that we could cut the OPS to make everyone's lives a little bit easier. I think this cutting contingencies isn't actually cutting contingencies, like Maddie said. Just think about what she said. It goes right back into it. Form reverted funds at the end of the year. I think that's the right cut to make. I think that's the best cut to make, and I think that's going to benefit the most students in the long run.
We're now in voting procedure. For is for, the objection for Sean, against is Ben, and then abstain. All those in favor? All those against? All those against, hold up your hands again. I didn't count. And all those abstaining. With about a vote count of 4 to 7 to 1, we're now at the activity and service fee business office. The number you're looking for is in the Senate approval column. Austin.
Motion to amend line item 6 to $264,510.
There's been a motion to amend line 6, ASF contingencies, to $264,510. Are there any objections?
I object.
15-second pro-con. Sean.
Once again, I think we should look at student government OPS. I think that we aren't looking at it because of the inherent bias in the room based on the number of people that have either been employed by student government OPS or are currently employed by student government OPS.
I think Dr. Posey has been comfortable with the $52,000 reduction, and I think in order to get through this budget hearing, it's the right move to do. It's a contingency. More than likely, people are going to revert based off previous years. So the money's not going to go to the ASF business office. And I think, just on another note, there are entities here who have not taken any cuts. And so I would rather take this from the contingency than go to, say, late nights and other things.
We'll now be in voting procedure. 4 is for the objection for Sean, against is for Austin, and then to abstain. All those in favor for the objection. All those against. And all those abstaining. With a vote count of 4 to 8 to 1, the motion stands. There's been a motion to vote on amending line 6 ASF contingencies to $264,510. We're now in voting procedure. All those in favor? those against? And all those abstaining? With a vote count of 8 to 5 to 0, the amendment passes. Is there a motion to approve the activity and service fee budget as a whole? Any objections?
I object.
Is this for the same reason?
Yep.
We've voted on this 3 times. We're now in voting procedure on the activity and service fee budget.
I object.
Fine. Would you like to?
Doesn't the objection have to have merit or no? It's been voted down 2 times, 3 times. It doesn't have merit.
Birdie?
Unless. Isn't a vote no objection?
Point of information or point of clarification. Wouldn't we have to go into speech, question, debate on the motion then?
No, just debate.
Just debate?
Yeah, the motion's been made. You're now debating the motion.
Great. Everybody has 30 seconds if you wish to debate. Ben, your 30 seconds starts when you're ready.
I would like everyone to look at line 190 on the document. Remaining budget to be allocated is currently $0. Let's keep it that way.
Desai.
I apologize. My hand is still up.
Julian.
Look, I don't want to make any of the cuts that we've made all day, all yesterday, today, the day before, but I thoroughly believe that we've made the right decision. And I thoroughly believe that it's not for a lack of wanting to look at ourselves that we're going through this. It's for the belief that we're doing the best for our students. So I think we should know.
Sean.
I don't believe that we should have cut CRT to the extent we did. I don't think we should have cut the RWC to the extent that we did. I don't think we need to have seen the contingency and the capacity that we did. I think we should have seen student government OPS, and I still believe that we should.
Maddie.
We made these decisions as a committee. We are a committee, and we voted on these decisions based on student impact. And I think no one wanted to cut CRT or FAO. And I mean, there had to be cuts somewhere, and we are student government, and we're making these decisions. And so we have to take some of those cuts. And I think that the contingency is the least amount of student impact. If we're going to go into other organizations and cut positions, I think that we value our positions, at least I do. And I think everyone, I can say that for
Thank you, Senator.
Whatever. Okay.
Block.
I think the cuts we made to CRT and FAO were fiscally irresponsible, and I would much rather go into OPS for the executive and legislative branches than be having this discussion here. I think it's important to look at ourselves. I am a voluntary employee. I have been here for 3 days without pay, and I have been fully debating and doing what I need to do. So I think that is an option for other students as well.
Hey, Ryan, I've raised my hand now.
Desai.
I would agree with Block and Mitchinson here. I definitely do think that cutting the CRT and FAO budgets, especially when we can reduce the amount of hours for student government are available. Like we reduced Knights Plaza, we can definitely reduce student government since it is very much a voluntary position. And that is the end of my debate.
Ben.
Move to vote on The business office.
The
Oh,
budget.
move to vote on line items 3 to line 194, the budget.
There's been a motion to vote on the activity and service fee budget. We're now in voting procedure. All those in favor? All those against? And all those abstaining? With a vote count of 10 to 3 to 1, the activity service fee budget is approved. Miscellaneous business.
Point of information. Point of information. Do we not have
Information.
point of information or point of inquiry? Do we not have to approve the entire budget as a whole?
We just did. That was the vote.
Oh, I thought we were approving the business office. My bad.
Miscellaneous business. Block.
Move to adjourn pending final roll call.
There's been a motion to adjourn pending final roll call. We're now in final roll call.
Sorry, 1 second. Chair Regan,
Here.
President Hall,
Here.
Vice President Wilson,
Here.
Comptroller Fabregas,
Here.
Speaker Ananobi, Pro Tempore Kehoe, absent. Chair Block, Chair Dench, Chair Malakoff,
Here.
Senator Huerta, absent. Senator Duque,
I'm here, sorry.
all good. Absentee Vice Chair Brackett, Student at Large Desai,
Here.
Student at Large Rumbaum,
Here.
and Senator Bertram.
Here.
I adjourn this meeting at 10:49 a.m.